The handcuffs closed with a steady click, and for a moment the room felt as if it had stopped moving. Robert Hanssen sat very still, his palms flat on the small table in front of him. Men in plain clothes stood around the room with quiet faces. One agent read rights into a tape recorder. A camera watched everything. Outside, the city kept moving. People walked, cars rolled, and the sun moved across the sky. But inside that little interrogation room, the air felt very heavy. This was the moment the long secret finally had a name attached to it. Betrayal. For more than 20 years, someone inside the very halls that protect America had been passing secrets to a foreign country. That someone had a face and a job and a family. He had driven a small car, gone to church, and worked long nights. His name was Robert Hanssen, and the shock was that he was not a stranger hunted in the dark. He was an FBI agent, the kind of person people trusted to keep them safe. When the news broke, it sounded like a thunderclap on every radio and television. People asked the same puzzle question: how could a trusted agent hand over the country's secrets? The answer was not a single moment, but hundreds of small choices stretched out over many years. To understand, we must go back and look at the long line of small, quiet things that led to this arrest. Only then will a full picture of trust broken, secrets sold, and a slow hunt that ended in a little room with a click of handcuffs make sense. Robert Hanssen was not born an enemy. He was a man who grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and later moved to the Washington area. He loved puzzles and numbers. He liked a tidy life, a small house, a steady job, and a routine. He joined the FBI in the 1970s. People who worked with him said he was smart and careful. He learned to read files and follow leads. In work, he was patient. He kept his head down and did what was asked. Over time, Hanssen worked in parts of the FBI that handled very sensitive information. He had clearance to read classified files, papers and notes that most people never see. These were the kinds of documents that explain how agents do their work and how the country protects itself. He was trusted. He had access to rooms and files and information other people could not touch. But trust is a quiet thing. It grows with every small action and fades with every hint of wrong. At some point, Hanssen began to make choices that would break that trust. For reasons that would be the subject of many questions, he started telling a foreign power things he had no right to share. He passed along names of agents, details about secret operations, and lists of people who were helping the United States from the other side of the world. The exact reasons he did this are complicated. Some said money, others said pride, others said loneliness. But whatever the reason, those acts changed lives. What made Hanssen's case frightening was how long it went on. For years, foreign intelligence officers got notes from him sewn into small packages, left in places where only they would look. The information he gave them helped them spot American agents overseas and move against people who helped the United States. Some of those people paid with their freedom, and some paid with their lives. When secrets move into the wrong hands, people elsewhere can be hurt. That fear, of friends betrayed and dangers revealed, made the story heavy. At first, no one knew who the mole was. The FBI noticed strange things. Pieces of their own work ended up in places they did not expect, and people they thought safe were suddenly compromised. A quiet alarm rang inside the halls of the agency. Teams of investigators were formed. They read old files. They watched phones and studied bank records. The hunt for a spy inside the FBI became a long, patient game of detective work, a puzzle using people's actions, not just fingerprints. Detectives had many clues, but no direct proof at the beginning. They knew something was wrong because foreign agents seemed to know what the FBI would do before it happened. They noticed that some operations failed not because the plans were bad, but because someone on the inside had told the other side where to look. These were small hints that together made a big case. Hanssen was very careful. He avoided writing direct notes that would point straight back at him. He learned ways to leave information without being seen to carry it. He used boxes and books in hidden places. He learned to make himself invisible in a job that requires being noticed. That made him dangerous and hard to catch. Still, the FBI is a place full of people who watch carefully. Junior agents and older agents, analysts and tech people all look for patterns. Working the case meant looking at records for small hints, odd travel plans, unexplained money, or a man who left the office at odd hours. They went through files and asked quiet questions. Over time, a picture began to form. Little holes in the story started to appear, and those holes led to larger openings. One of the quietest and most important tools the investigators used was patience. They set traps in small, clever ways that did not involve loud announcements. They planted information that would only be useful if someone on the inside passed it along. They watched to see who would act like a link in the chain. It was slow, careful work, the kind of work that requires a small hope and a long time. Meanwhile, life went on. Hanssen kept his job. He sat in his office and answered calls. He drank coffee in the break room and walked through the halls like any other agent. People who knew him said he was polite and calm. He had a family, a wife and children, and on the outside, he acted like a man who loved his home. This made the betrayal feel even stranger. It was not a person living on the edge of the law. It was someone in the center. In small interviews with people who had once worked with him, a pattern emerged. Hanssen liked to collect things that made him feel powerful. He liked control. He liked puzzles. Some said he wanted respect that his job did not offer. Others wonder whether the secret life gave him something the office could not. These are questions about the inside of a man, and they do not have easy answers. What matters to the victims is not the why so much as the damage. The damage was not just the paper files and programs. The damage was to people. Some of the covert assistants who worked for the United States in foreign countries were exposed. They were arrested. Some were executed. Their names ended up in places they never should have been. Families in other countries paid the price for a betrayal in a windowless office. That weight moved the hunt forward. Finding the leak was not just about catching a thief. It was about saving lives. As the detectives closed in, they found small threads connecting Hanssen to suspicious moments. A key step was following money and watching how small packages moved through public places. Another step was listening to signals in the middle of the night and watching who came and went. It was a list of pieces that, little by little, made a whole picture. When the picture became strong enough, they acted. The arrest itself was planned like any careful operation. Agents wanted to be sure the evidence would hold up in court. They wanted to be as quiet and precise as possible. They waited until they had clear proof that Hanssen had taken documents and passed them along. Then one morning, he was asked to come into a room. He sat. They read him his rights. There was no loud struggle. There was a heavy pause and a click. For people who had followed the case, the arrest was an end to hunt and the beginning of the next phase. The cleaning up. Investigators had to figure out what Hanssen had taken and how to protect the people who might still be in danger. They had to reassure partners and rebuild plans. They had to tell stories in court, line up witnesses, and explain how a trusted agent had broken the law. News of the arrest shook the public. People asked whether their safety had been put at risk. They asked how one man could cause so much harm. For the men and women in layered jobs, it was a hard lesson. People in the work must be watched just as closely as people outside watch others. The arrest led to changes, new checks, better reviews, and more care in how secret they're handled. The agency had to look inward, and that is never easy. But the story did not end with the arrest. That is the cliffhanger that kept many awake at night. Even after the handcuffs and the tape recorders, other questions waited. How many operations had been damaged? Which of the secrets could be fixed? How many people were still at risk because of the information that had been leaked early in the case? Some names could be protected and some operations could be redesigned. Yet the worst news for many people was the list of those who could not be rescued. Some lives had already been changed forever. So the arrest was a high point and a low one at the same time. It was a moment of truth when a long hunt came to an end and the long work to repair the damage began. It was shocking because the man had been trusted. It was sad because secrets cost people their safety. At the very end of this chapter, one more sharp event happened that made the story even louder. When investigators searched Hanssen's home and office, they found a box of documents and a small, precise trail of papers that matched foreign files. Those papers were not just scraps. They were the key proof. They showed dates, names, and how Hanssen had arranged the information. That finding made the court case stronger, and it made people understand the depth of the betrayal. The world breathed, and then it asked more questions. How would justice handle such a thing? How would the country heal? Could trust be rebuilt inside a place built on secrecy? The handcuffs were closed, but the long work to answer those questions was only beginning. We stop here. When you are ready, I will continue with Chapter 2.